Hi, David.
Hi, John. I can hear you. I can see you. Your logo is good.
Okay.
Okay, see you in a bit.
Hi, David.
Oh, hi, Rogerio.
How's it going?
I can, hang on a second here. Where are you? There you are. Okay, I can hear you, see you. Your logo is good, and you are good to go also.
Great. See you soon.
Okay, see you in a bit.
Yep.
David, I think you're there. I just want to make sure you can see and hear me.
Let me see.
That
I can
the
hear
background
you.
the right way. It should be right, but
Let me see if I can find you. Okay, yeah, there you are.
Okay.
Yes, I can hear you. I can see you, and your logo is good, and
great.
you're good to go.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Hi, Isaac. You need to flip your logo the other way. There you go. You're good. Okay, if we can get the commissioners online, please. And our acting chair, it is 6:30.
Looks like we have everyone, David. I think.
Yeah,
we're here.
I think we do. I think.
I can't see everybody, but let's see. I see Commissioner Thomas. I see Commissioner Dutta. I see Commissioner Lombardi, Vincent. Okay, yes, we are all here.
Okay, we are streaming live on all social media platforms and cable channel 10 and cable channels. So we're good to go. And whenever you'd like to call the meeting to order.
Great, thank you. So I am acting as chair this evening. Commissioner Chair Hoopengarner was not able to make it this evening. So I do want to call this meeting of the West Hollywood Planning Commission to order. This is a regularly scheduled meeting. It is Thursday, November 4th, 2021. And now I need to read instructions. So in an effort to protect public health and prevent the spread of COVID-19 coronavirus, AB 361 has authorized public meetings to take place via teleconference because state and local officials are recommending measures to promote social distancing. This Planning Commission meeting is being conducted via teleconference on the city's website and is also provided on a wide array of streaming media platforms to offer access to the public to the fullest extent possible. WehoTV staff have confirmed that this Planning Commission meeting is currently streaming successfully on Spectrum Channel 10 and online at weho.org/WehoTV. That's weho.org/WehoTV. In addition, as a courtesy, this meeting is also successfully streaming on the city's YouTube channel at youtube.com/WehoTV and on Roku, Apple TV, Fire TV, and Android TV. WehoTV staff monitor this broadcast on all platforms throughout the meeting and will notify the Planning Commission secretary should broadcast disruptions arise. Please do not interrupt the live meeting by calling or texting planning commissioners about difficulties viewing the meeting. In addition, you may call in to listen to this meeting by dialing 669-900-6833. Again, that number is 669-900-6833. The meeting ID is 871-8944-9020, and then you can press the pound sign. Again, that's meeting ID 871-8944-9020, followed by the pound sign. Please understand that internet speeds, device reliability, third-party platform reliability, and individual or personal technical issues are out of the scope of this broadcast. If you are experiencing viewing difficulties while watching this live stream, please reload the page or visit weho.org/WehoTV to access our official live stream and to view a list of other available streaming options and a guide to troubleshoot your connection. If you continue to experience difficulties, you can also call 323-848-3151. Thank you. I need to ask someone to do the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Lombardi, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Sure.
Thank you.
Please place your hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I sprung that on you without a prior request.
No worries.
So
It's okay.
thank you for humoring me. Appreciate
Of
it.
course.
Item 3 is roll call. Secretary David Gilla, can you please call roll for us?
Thank you, and good evening, commissioners. As Acting Chair Jones stated earlier, Chair Hoopengarner is absent from tonight's proceedings. All roll call votes will reflect that. Commissioner Vincent?
Here.
Commissioner Thomas?
Here.
Commissioner Lombardi?
Here.
Commissioner Dutta?
Here.
Commissioner Carvalero?
Here.
Acting Chair Jones?
Here.
And we have a quorum.
Great, thank you. Just got a little bit fuzzy there for a moment. Can everyone hear me clearly? I just want to make sure my connection is good. Great, thank you. Appreciate the nods. All right, so item 4 is approval of the agenda. I have a couple of changes. One is for item 10C. Staff noted that there is a correction that needs to be made on the agenda. The agenda states that this is an amendment to a development agreement when it's actually a development permit. All of the other supporting information, staff report, resolution, noticing, etc., is correct. So staff is comfortable moving forward with the item, but I'd like to give our city attorney, Mr. Isaac Rosen, hello, welcome to our meeting, a chance to make that clarification for the record. But before we do that, I would like to propose that we bring items 10C and 11A forward on the agenda, as Commissioner Caballero must recuse from items 10A and 10B, which is 8730 Sunset Boulevard, which we have a recommendation for continuance on to the December 2nd, not the November 18th meeting, as is noted in the staff materials for this item. I know that was a lot. I will move to approve the agenda with those changes, but I'm also certainly open to hearing if anyone has any objections or would like to discuss.
And acting chair, I'd just make a note. I think you did a fantastic job. We do just have that one minor clarification on agenda item 10C, as you read into the record. The narrative should describe a request for an amendment to a development permit and not a development agreement. But as you mentioned, all other noticing for this item was correct in terms, including published and mailed notice and within the materials themselves.
Great, thank you. Do I have a second? Again, happy to entertain conversation around the order of the agenda as needed.
I'll second.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Caballero. If there are no further comments, David, can you go ahead and take our votes?
Thank you. Commissioner Carvalero,
Yes.
Commissioner Detta,
Yeah.
Commissioner Lombardi,
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas,
Yes.
Commissioner Vincent,
Yes.
Acting Chair Jones,
Yes.
and the agenda is approved as amended for November 4th, 2021, noting the absence of Chair Huppenberger.
Great, thank you, David. Item 5 is approval of the minutes due to administrative time constraints, as is noted in the agenda packet for this week's meeting. Staff is requesting a continuance of this action to Thursday, November 18th, our next meeting, for the minutes from the October 21st, 2021 meeting. David, do we need to vote on this?
No, this can be a consensus. That's fine.
Okay, great. Do we have consensus on this item? Does anybody have any questions or comments? It looks like not. All right. With that, we will move on to item 6, public comment. David, do we have anyone who would like to speak?
Chair, I received no public comment speaker forms for this item. There are a few people on the platform with us. If there's anybody that would like to make a general comment unrelated to any item on the current agenda, please *9 for me at this time. That would let us know that you'd like to make a comment on this. And Chair, it looks like we are all clear for this item.
Great, thank you. If anyone does want to give a comment and I don't know, the next 30 seconds, please do follow the instructions that David just so eloquently listed. Otherwise, there will be another opportunity for public comment, general public comments near the end of the meeting. So I think we can go ahead and move on to item 7, which is our director's report.
Good evening, Chair and members of the Commission. My name is John Kehoe, and I'm the Director of Planning and Development Services. So I have just a couple of items, some updates on things from City Council meeting. The council meeting was last night, so it was unusual. You may have heard there were some technical difficulties, and so the meeting was actually held last night. The council did hold the hearing on the 9001 Santa Monica Boulevard, the development agreement extension. They did approve it. They did modify it slightly. They approved it for 20 months, not 24 months. And they did also say they're not going to waive the fee request. Also on the agenda had been 8760 Shoreham Drive, an appeal of that item. The appellant's attorney submitted some documents the very last minute, and so that item was continued to address some of those concerns. So that'll be scheduled in the future. And since the meeting went really long last night, Lauren Langer was there late till midnight or so, working live during the meeting, working on ordinance language. So we're fortunate today to have Isaac Rosen as our representing BB&K for our city attorney questions and issues. So welcome him to our meeting tonight. And that's all I have for tonight. Oh,
Great,
I did want to remind everybody in the community to the next city council meeting is a kind of a special meeting. They're talking about community safety issues. So that might be something that people in the community would like to pay attention to.
Great, thank you, John. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Kehoe at this time? Looks like not. Thank you so much, John. All right, we will move on to item 8, which is items from commissioners. And as a general rule, as chair or acting chair, I always like to go last, but there are 2 things that I would like to say up front. One is that I would ask that everyone please keep Commissioner Hoopengarner and her family in your thoughts and prayers at this time. Without going into too much detail, I think she and her family could probably use you know, any good energy, thoughts, etc. you're able to send her way. So I just wanted to say that. I also wanted to acknowledge that at the last meeting, at the last item at which during which I was acting chair, Commissioner Thomas expressed concern and I think some confusion about the fact that after we closed the public comment portion of the hearing and moved into deliberation, that we were still asking questions of the applicant. She was correct. I stand fully corrected, and I'm so sorry if there was any confusion about that item, Commissioner Thomas. It's so much easier to do this when there is the prompt of someone actually having to approach the dais, and that was my bad. So I am working earnestly to make sure that that does not happen again this evening, and that she was correct that is correct parliamentary procedure. So I did want to state that. And now anybody else can give a comment. Do we have any comments from any of the other commissioners? Commissioner Dutta.
Just had a very quick comment. I just wanted to wish everybody on the call and watching this meeting a happy Diwali. Today is Diwali. It's one of the larger festivals celebrated in India and South Asia, but certainly has made its way around the world now. So just wanted to say that, happy Diwali.
Thank you. Happy Diwali to you as well, Commissioner Dutta. Thank you. Anyone else have any comments at this time? Commissioner Lombardi.
Thank you. Just a quick note, my condolences to Chair Hoopengarner and her family, and I wish her and her family the best. Definitely unfortunate news. And if Commissioner Thomas in any way I was part of the confusion during the questions and items during our last planning commission meeting, I feel like I got a little bit confused at one point too in terms of at what portion we were in the meeting. So I just wanted to apologize if I added to any confusion there. And yeah, I think I'll try to definitely voice any questions or concerns in terms of where we are maybe in this meeting. We can just make sure that we mark the points as we go between, and I'm sure the acting chair Jones, you'll do a wonderful job. So I know it can get a little confusing in these meetings sometimes.
Thanks, Commissioner Lombardi. I do want to note there are no condolences for Commissioner Hoopengarner, just good thoughts and energy at this time.
Okay. That's
not great news, but not terrible
that.
news just yet. Anyone else have any? Oh, Commissioner Thomas.
I just wanted to thank you, Vice Chair, for the acknowledgement around the confusion. I think that you're doing a wonderful job chairing or chairing these meetings. And it was just a confusing turn of events, but thank you for that acknowledgement. I really appreciate it. And I just want to say that you're doing an excellent job as acting chair.
Thank you. Have I ever told you that I love being in charge? I'm kidding. Not really though. Anyone else have any comments at this time? No? All right, then we will move on to item 9, consent calendar. There is none. And so again, just for the public or anyone who might have just joined, we are going to move into public hearings. The order for this will now be 10C, then a new business item 11A, which is a quick presentation from the Coalition for Economic Survival, then followed by items 10A and again 10B, the latter of which has been recommended for continuance to the December 2nd Planning Commission meeting. So with that, I would defer to staff to give the staff report and presentation. This again is for 8746 Sunset Boulevard. This is a request for an amendment to a development permit to remove the land use restriction on the property for retail use only and remove the limit on the hours of operation for this property. With that, I will mute and turn this over to staff.
Thank you. Good evening, Acting Chair Jones, members of the Commission. Antonio Castillo, Senior Planner with the Current and Historic Preservation Planning Division. I'm going to share my screen here. I have a brief PowerPoint presentation. This is not a development project. However, just for reference, I have some illustrations if that's helpful. As you mentioned, Acting Chair, the item before you this evening is a request to amend Development Permit 01-44 from 2002 by eliminating 2 conditions of approval relating to the use of the commercial building for retail only, and another condition limiting the hours of operation for that retail use. The project site is located at 8746 Sunset Boulevard, which is within the Area 6B of the Sunset Specific Plan. The site is approximately 8,067 square feet, located on the south side of Sunset Boulevard and developed with a 3-level approximately 7,600 square foot commercial building. In April of 2002, the Planning Commission approved the development permit and a variance for the conversion of the commercial structure used as an office to a retail use with an addition of approximately 2,300 square feet. The variance at the time waived the requirement for the offsite loading space that applied at that time before the code changed to eliminate that the need or that requirement for a commercial building of this size. An appeal was subsequently filed in April of 2002. The City Council reviewed and ultimately denied that appeal in September, thereby upholding the Planning Commission's initial approval. The applicant's request this evening eliminates 2 conditions of approval, including condition 11.1, which states this permit approves retail use of the property only. Any proposed change of use requires review with a public hearing before the Planning Commission. The second condition is condition 11.2, which states due to the proximity of the retail use and the parking areas to residential uses, the hours of operation of this location shall be limited to 9 a.m. to 8 p.m., except where extensions of these hours are granted by special event permit. Both of these conditions were included to address the potential noise impacts from the rear parking lot to the neighboring residential properties to the south, fronting onto Holloway Drive. The commercial building is located approximately 70 feet away from the closest residential building with a parking lot that includes the required 9 parking spaces. The applicant's request is to consider the removal of these 2 conditions as they place an undue burden on the property that is not imposed on any other property in the same zone. In fact, there are other retail, office, and restaurant uses with parking lots that are equally close or closer to the residential uses throughout our commercial streets that do not have these similar conditions. According to the applicant, restricting the use to retail only has caused an inability to secure a viable long-term tenant in the commercial building. The property is located, as I mentioned, in Area 6B of the Sunset Specific Plan, which has objectives that encourage a diverse mix of uses that extends the pedestrian focus of the Sunset Plaza further west. Additionally, the objectives encourage development and businesses that provide nighttime uses and increase nighttime safety on Sunset Boulevard. Approval of the request would allow the commercial building to operate and be occupied in a manner consistent with all other properties on Sunset Boulevard. And restricting the use of the building to retail only limits the property from accomplishing the vision and goals of the Sunset Specific Plan and the general plan. This area along Sunset includes a diverse mix of entertainment, retail, and office and hotel uses that support the entertainment and destination orientation of character of the area, consistent with the uses permitted and encouraged in the SSP as well as the general plan. And additionally, staff discussed this request with the Code Compliance Division and was informed that there have not been any recorded complaints or cases having to do with noise from prior tenants of the use or the parking lot. And so it's staff's assessment that the limitation of the use of this commercial building does place an undue burden on the site that is not imposed on other commercial properties in the same district. It's important to note that all other existing conditions of approval in the development permit from 2002 will remain in effect. As I previously mentioned, the building remains vacant at the moment. Any new tenant or change of use will be subject to review for conformance with the applicable provisions in the municipal code. And to that point, staff recommends a new condition, condition 1.7 in the draft resolution, requiring that all building and site improvements, change of land use or change of tenant shall be reviewed and approved pursuant to the applicable provisions set forth in the West Hollywood Municipal Code and appropriately conditioned as applicable, so as to not endanger, jeopardize, or otherwise constitute a menace to the public convenience, health, interest, safety, or the general welfare of persons residing or working in the vicinity of the proposed use. So in conclusion, staff recommends approval of the proposed amendment to the development permit from 2002. And with that, this concludes my presentation. The property owner's representative, Mr. Jeff Seymour, is also in the Zoom room available to answer any questions as I am. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Great. Thank you, Tony. At this time, also to be clear, Tony, will Mr. Seymour be giving a presentation?
I believe so. I see.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Okay.
Or he has the.
Sure. That's what I thought. All right. Sure. I did want to give commissioners the opportunity to ask any questions of staff at this time. Again, this would only be about items contained in the staff report. If you have questions or points of clarification, I would ask that you not ask any questions that might be leading or that would lead us into deliberation. So any questions from staff or from commission for Commissioner Thomas?
Thank you, Chair. I just have a couple of questions. I wanted to get some more context about in 2002, when this first came before Planning Commission and Council, these conditions were put in place and they were upheld by Council. Could you tell us the specific reasons that the Planning Commission felt that these conditions were needed in 2002.
Yes, from the administrative record, what we've gathered from this is that the parking, the change in use required additional parking spaces. And in order to accommodate the additional parking spaces, the applicant introduced parking lifts in the rear parking lot. Now, these parking lifts 19 years ago were not as technologically advanced as they are today. So the concern was that these parking lifts were going to be noisy or clunky and be going up and down, throughout the business hours, potentially causing some noise to the residents to the south. That was disproven at that time, and the Planning Commission felt comfortable with the allowing the parking lifts to accommodate the required parking spaces. And so the record shows that the discussion from prior minutes of that time had to do with the parking area, not so much the use of the commercial building, but the activity of configuring and parking the vehicles in the rear yard area.
So the appeal was about parking and not about how the space was utilized or the hours?
The appeal was focused, the appeal itself was focused on the variance. The appellant was concerned that the findings were not adequate to waive the loading area. So at that time in 2002, the municipal code required that any commercial retail use that had that was over 5,000 square feet would require a loading area. And these loading areas are approximately 10 by 20 in size. The property would not physically be able to accommodate that. And so the findings were that that requirement would be waived. That the code has subsequently been amended to increase that 5,000 square foot threshold to 10,000 square feet, so making the loading area no longer applicable or required here. But so to answer your question, Commissioner Thomas, the variance was focused around the appeal was focused around the variance.
Okay, thank you for that. But I guess what I'm still not understanding is why the Planning Commission of 2002 found it necessary to condition that this particular property be retail only. And you're saying that it had to do with the parking lot?
So the minutes in 2002 reflected that there was discussion, and in fact there was a motion that failed that was going to limit the use of the parking, the use of the parking lifts to a certain hour. However, the minutes reflected that because the parking is used throughout the hours of operation of the business, they elected to restrict the use itself. So those hours in the condition from, I believe it was from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. Were only for a particular land use. They were concerned that there was going to be additional noise if those lifts were operating at any hour of the day.
Okay, and then one last question. So I feel like what we received in our packet and what was stated this evening is not the same. In the packet, it stated that their lifting condition 11.1 could mean that the space could turn into a variety of uses, including restaurant, bar, nightclub. And what I feel like I heard this evening is that before those possible uses happened, it would come back before Planning Commission. So there would be some input before it became a nightclub.
Eliminating that condition, yes, would allow the building to, or the owner to lease the space out to any use that's allowed within the sunset specific plan. That the introduction of a new land use or business would need to be reviewed to make sure that it complies with the provisions for the sunset specific plan. So at that time, staff would be assessing any potential impacts, use and number of parking spaces, and so forth.
But it wouldn't come back before this body.
So let me just, I think specifically for a nightclub, it would require a conditional use permit. It would come back before this body. Specifically for a restaurant with alcohol, it would require a minor conditional use permit, would go to a director's hearing. It would be the same entitlement requirements that would be on any use in the zoning ordinance.
Okay, that's what
it just allows them to ask for that.
Perfect. That's what I wanted to know. Thank you so much. Those are all my questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. Any other Commissioner? I actually believe Commissioner Caballero had raised his hand next.
Yep, the last conversation answered my question, so I'm good.
Okay, great. Thank you. Commissioner Lombardi.
Thank you. Building upon Commissioner Thomas's question, I was just kind of going through the table for permits required and different land uses, and I was just trying to kind of highlight ones that might be a question, trying to understand what the logic was in 2002 versus now. And I think I understand with regards to nightclubs, bars, et cetera. I guess one question I have is I'm seeing that cannabis is listed as use permitted. So I'm just curious what that process is and how that would proceed and what that may mean, because it sounds like that wouldn't come to the Planning Commission.
That is correct, Commissioner. A cannabis business would go before the Business License Commission. However, this property is within a radius, I believe it's a 600-foot radius buffer that where a cannabis use would be prohibited on this property, given its proximity to the local school along Holloway.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for that added clarification. That is helpful. I do have a couple of questions circling back to the parking for a minute. So what is the required quantity of parking? And was that based on retail category? And how would that be reevaluated, or would it be reevaluated?
Yes, a retail use in a commercial building of this size is subject to 9 parking spaces as it currently has.
Okay, and my understanding is that there were 2 existing and 7 new. And I guess my other question is how many of these spots are lifts? Do we know? Maybe the applicant can answer that.
The applicant can clarify that, but it's my understanding there are 4 sets of lifts.
Okay. And then I wanted to flag a few things that we discussed in a call earlier today. In particular, we were going through some Google image photos and street views, and I had noted that there were some requirements in the original resolution with regards to trees. I think there was an existing magnolia tree to be preserved in place, or was it and maintained? There was a new tree as well in the front island. And then there was a screening tree in the rear of the property. And it appears that there are no existing trees. There may be a missing tree out front, and there may not be a tree in the rear. And I was wondering if you had any additional thoughts or take on that, or if you've coordinated with any colleagues on what the current situation may be.
Yes, Commissioner, with regards to the sidewalk tree or the parkway tree, that Magnolia grandiflora species was installed and removed several times for a reason that I'm not familiar with. But I did contact the facilities division and spoke to the supervisor who manages or supervises the parkway trees, and a tree is scheduled to be reinstalled there next week by the city. That is part of their work plan, and they would be installed next week is what I've been informed.
Okay. Is there any indication on why it's been removed or been needing replacement? It seems like it was there and gone and has repeated that cycle a few times.
Right. That I don't have that information.
Okay.
I did notice that it was replaced over the years, at least twice, but for a reason that I'm not aware of.
Okay, that'd be good to understand before we plant another tree that may present an issue. And then how about in the parking area?
The rear yard area, I don't believe there is a tree there. I'm not sure if the applicant has any information on of what happened to that tree and whether a tree was ever planted there. But I don't have any indication that a tree currently exists in the rear yard area.
And that was included in the original conditions and the resolution to City Council in 2002.
Yes, there is a condition to that effect. You are correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Lombardi. Any other questions from you at this time?
No.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Thomas?
My apologies. I had one more question. I wanted to find out, was there a neighborhood meeting to discuss the possible elimination of these two conditions?
There was no required neighborhood meeting. I'm not sure if the applicant team conducted a courtesy meeting, but one is not required for this type of process.
Okay, just because I've brought this up before, I'm not completely sure I understand or agree with when a neighborhood meeting should be scheduled. There's going to be a possible intensification of this project that could ultimately lead to a restaurant or a nightclub. So I just think that it would be really good to get input from I'm not saying that that's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen there, but the decision we make now could lead to that in the future. And it would be good to hear from the residents on how that would impact their lives. So I know I brought this up a couple of meetings ago when we were talking about the hair salon that was becoming a neighborhood bar, and how we should have conversations with our residents about these types of things. So if we could circle back to that conversation soon about how and when we decide to do neighborhood meetings, I think that would be really, really helpful.
Thanks, Commissioner Thomas. Any other questions from commissioners at this time? Looks like no. I would like for us to do disclosures before the applicant starts the presentation. Any disclosures? It sounds like there's at least one. Commissioner Lombardi.
Yes, I had a brief discussion with the applicant. We discussed matters contained within the staff report. It was a fairly brief call.
Thank you. Any other disclosures from commissioners? I also had a very brief phone call with the applicant's representative today, and we discussed items contained in the staff report. And with that, Mr. Seymour, I will give you the floor, please. For posterity, can you please state your name and city of residence?
Yes, Chair Jones, members of the commission, my name is Jeff Seymour with Seymour Consulting Group. I reside in Westlake Village. Chair Jones, I will try to be blessedly brief. Much of this has now been brought forth to the commission, but first of all, I wish to thank Mr. Castillo for his assistance. We agree with the findings and conditions set forth in the staff report. Commissioner Thomas, I must say, I want to bring forth the ultimate anomaly here. A property owner who 19 years ago voluntarily gave up uses allowed within a legally designated zone. I wish I could clarify and give you a reason why that actually did take place, but I just don't have that information. I do know that Mr. Castillo mentioned that to me that there are no properties in Area 6B having these restrictions. Candidly, I did my own look-see and found that there was no property along the Sunset Strip, or I could find no property in the city of West Hollywood that has been burdened with these use restrictions. Simply stated, we're here because the property owner cannot secure a viable retail tenant. Here's some facts that were not in the staff report. Sunset Plaza LLC has owned this property since 2016. The property is vacant. The 2002 entitlement requires 9 on-site parking spaces provided via vertical stackers. I do believe, Commissioner Lombardi, that they are 4 stackers, as was mentioned by Mr. Castillo. The stackers are presently inoperable and will be replaced as if and when a tenant is actually secured. To reflect on Ms. Al-Khair's comments, any use of this building will trigger a review by the city. Zone clearance, administrative approval, conditional use permit, development permit, any one of these approvals would allow the city to review parking or hours of operation, or quite candidly, any other issues that may in fact come up during the process of review for entitlement. Every condition, every other condition set forth in the 2002 resolution, sans the 2 we are requesting be removed, will be in effect. Commissioner Lombardi, I know you and I had talked about condition 7.6. That was the condition relating to landscape screening, the back of the building. I can tell you that we will in fact review all of the conditions. Mr. Castillo and I did as much as we could this afternoon, but obviously as we move forward, hopefully retaining a tenant, we would be sure that those conditions that are still in effect will continue to be in effect. Finally, we are here tonight requesting that this property be afforded the same rights and uses provided every other property within the SSP zone. I'm here to respond to any questions. I thank you and I thank the commission for giving us the opportunity to speak tonight and giving us your consideration. Thank you, Chairman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Seymour. Let's hold on questions for the applicant until the end. I'm not going to make that mistake again. Do we have any public commenters, David?
Thank you, Chair. I received no public comment forms for this item. If there is anybody on the platform that would like to make a comment, please star 9 for me from your phone. That would let us know you'd like to make a comment. And Chair, it looks like we are all clear for this item.
Great, thank you. So as per procedure, the applicant actually has an opportunity for a rebuttal now. Mr. Seymour, unless there's anything you'd like to add, I think the next best step is to keep the public comment portion of the hearing open and to allow commissioners to ask questions that they have about the project that weren't answered during the staff presentation.
I would concur. Thank you, Chair Jones.
And acting chair, I would just mention, I think that sounds like a good strategy in line with our AB 361 requirements. We can leave the public hearing open in case anyone hops on the line before deliberations.
Great, my thinking exactly. Thank you for affirming that. Do we have any questions from commissioners for Mr. Seymour? Commissioner Dutta?
Thank you. Just one question, given the history of this property since 2002 and it's it being unsuccessfully able to secure a steady tenant. In the past, has there been just a single tenant for the building, and is that something that's envisioned for the future, or would there be potential for there to be multiple tenants and multiple uses?
It's a good question, Commissioner. I can't speak for anything before 2016. I'm unsure if there were a multiple group of tenants or whatever. Since 2016, I have been told by the applicant or by the property owner that there have been nothing but difficulty in finding or securing a tenant. So to my knowledge, they have had a vacant building. In relation to your second part of that question, obviously, if they find a tenant, it's a 3-story building, they may be able to find multiple tenants. If it's an office building and they are going through the zone clearance procedure, again, city would have the opportunity to review and make determinations dealing with everything from parking to hours of operation or the like. We just can't say at this moment because, quite candidly, we just don't know what we're going to get once we get into the market.
Got it. Thank you. That's all I've got.
Thanks, Commissioner Dutta. Any other questions from commissioners for the applicant at this time? Commissioner Thomas?
Thank you, Chair. So I walked by the property, and the entire block and the block to the east, as well as all the properties on the opposite side of the street, are all retail. So can you identify any specific reason why you might have had trouble securing a retail tenant?
I can't. I came in, Commissioner, it's probably about 8 or 9 months ago, and we were still in COVID. I wish I could give you a clear answer, but I can't. I don't have the information that you might need in order to get that response.
Okay, and at this time, you do not have a prospective tenant in mind?
That is correct.
So the ask to remove the condition surrounding the restriction on hours is just a general ask, because most of what I'm trying to get to is, do you have any specific idea of what's to come or what could potentially come? Because the ask to extend the hours just leads me to believe that you're looking to eventually make it into perhaps a bar or a restaurant or a nightclub.
To assure you, Commissioner, we do not have any potential use that's in the near future, because they just haven't been able to to market this as anything but a retail. I can tell you that if it was going to go through a restaurant process, the city would have more than enough opportunity to speak to and make a decision on a condition of approval. So as an example, if there was going to be outdoor dining, there would be a need for an administrative approval, which would in fact secure the parking and the hours of operation. Similarly, if it was going to go through a situation where there was going to be alcoholic sale, there would be a minor conditional use permit, which would also require a director's hearing to review and again, make a determination in relation to hours of operation and parking. If there was going to be a significant change in the building and it goes to a development permit, the Planning Commission would have its say as to it's exactly as it would be for any other use along the Sunset Strip.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, Commissioner Thomas? Any other questions from any other commissioners? Okay, if that's all, I don't have any questions, and it looks like we're good there. So with that, I will close the public comment portion of the hearing. If any of us have additional questions for the applicant's representative, I will reopen it so that we can ask questions at that time. But I am officially moving us into deliberation, and I'm taking volunteers to start our conversation. I'm not going first because that's not what the chair does, so. Commissioner Caballero.
Yep. Thank you, Chair Jones. I'm really okay with this project, as long as, like, staff in our staff report on page 5 of 5, staff recommends condition 1.7, which really covers us in terms of any potential change of use that needs to be discussed. It will be discussed. It includes neighborhood meetings. I'm actually ready to make a motion to approve this as presented in the staff report, because I really don't have concern. I remember visiting this building when it first opened up as an art gallery. It was very specific. The building's very architecturally unique, and it has sat vacant for a long time. And it would be great to see something occupy this space after it's been vacant for such a long time. So I'm happy to move this process along, knowing that we will have an opportunity to review it depending on the use in the future.
Thanks, Commissioner Caballero. I do want to make sure everyone who wants to comment on this item has an opportunity to weigh in.
Of course.
Who would like to go next? Commissioner Lombardi.
I concur with all of that sentiment, and I agree that it's hard right now for businesses to operate, and any obstacles make that harder. And it does seem like there are additional obstacles on this property, and it would be great to not have another vacant spot on Sunset. That said, it seems to me, in kind of reading through the history of this project and what we've heard today, that some of the concerns related to noise and noise associated with parking and traffic moving in and out, with the adjacency of residences and a close by residential structure. So with that said, I think it's really important to make sure that any measures that were in place in 2002 actually are in fact in place at the property, such as the use of screening trees to help absorb some noise and also visibility onto the site in the rear of the property. I think that that's important, and I would suggest that we include in any resolution that the applicant comply with all applicable conditions that still exist in the original resolution. Also, I'm wondering, this may be a little bit above and beyond what we would usually see in a property, but acknowledging the concerns from 2002 and the fact that we have lifts, perhaps we should include, for added insurance, a measure about noise and checks to make sure that there isn't any noise at the property. I think depending on what were to become of the property, we may see it again, especially if there is an intensification of the site, but perhaps it would be prudent to include that now in case, just to make sure that that's accounted for.
Thank you, Commissioner Lombardi. Commissioner Dutta.
So I agree with everything that Commissioner Caballero mentioned earlier. This might be a question directed to the applicant. You mentioned that the lifts are inoperable right now, and they're going to be rebuilt once there is a tenant that's secured. I just don't know much about parking lifts. Since 2002, have there been new improvements in the technologies in which parking lifts now are far less noisy than they might have been when this was considered back then, to the point where it might be less of an issue today versus then?
Is this a question for the applicant? Sorry, before you respond.
Sorry,
Mr.
I'm sorry.
Seymour. It's okay. Is this a question for the applicant or for staff?
Honestly, whoever knows the answer.
Okay, fair enough. Okay,
yeah.
We're going to ask the applicant questions. I do need to reopen the public comment portion of the hearing. So
sorry.
Noting that I am doing that. No, it's okay. It's just for posterity, but I do want to make sure it's noted for the record. Go ahead, Mr. C.
Thank you, Chair Jones. To answer the question, Commissioner, I entitled the first stackers in West Hollywood a little before this specific project was approved. Believe me, this project was not one of mine. But the technology since that period of time is like 300 generations. And the issues dealing with noise, the ability to, in fact, use these mechanisms really are taking place all over the city at this point. So the response that I can give you, Commissioner, is yes, technology has changed. We are saying that we will replace the existing stackers with new stackers once in fact we have the tenant secured.
Great.
Thank you. Commissioner Dutta, do you have any other questions for the applicant?
I do not.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to close the public comment portion of the hearing again. Commissioner Thomas?
I was just going to go next.
Do you, totally fine. Do you have questions for the applicant, or can I keep the, okay, great. Thank you. Please go.
Oh, thank you. I just want to say that, you know, I'm a champion for business. I'm a champion for economic development and jobs and keeping vitality in every area of the city. But our job as commissioners is to balance the need for economic diversity in the activity on Sunset Boulevard and weigh that against the needs of our community and the protection of quality of life for our residents. And I understand that when someone buys a home near the Sunset Strip, they buy into a certain kind of lifestyle and community, but we still need to be reasonable about noise. So that's why I had so many concerns about, you know, basically taking away these conditions. But I agree with Commissioner Lombardi that as long as it's conditioned for noise, I am inclined to approve the removal of these two conditions.
Thanks, Commissioner Thomas. Commissioner Vincent?
Thanks, Chair. I concur with Commissioner Carviero. I'm also, you know, this building has been vacant for so long. It'd be nice to see some life in this area. I think it's definitely been an undue burden on the owner of this building. I'm fine with conditioning it for a noise check, you know, 6 months down the road once a tenant is obtained. But I'm also comfortable with, you know, any new use in this building is going to go in front of the director or go through the city in some way and we'll have a chance to review the parking and review the hours. So I'm happy to move this forward, whether we want to condition it or as is.
Great, thanks, Commissioner Vincent. I think that's everyone. If it's not, please check me. So really appreciate everyone's very thoughtful questions and comments about this. I think I'm in alignment with Commissioner Carviero. I think it's fairly cut and dry. To Commissioner Thomas's point, I obviously understand very much that we don't want people to, you know, be faced with a noisy property without having any input. That being said, I'm not sure, and I would defer to staff on this, that we need to condition this, because I think the way that we are conditioning it right now, with the addition, I believe, of condition 1.7, this means that any other change of use for this particular property would require this owner going through all of the appropriate steps that anybody else would have to. So I would be inclined to let the process run its course. If the applicant's representative would be amenable, and I'd like to also hear other commissioners' comments on this, maybe perhaps instead we could include a condition that would require them to have a neighborhood meeting regardless of the use. I don't even know if that's allowed, but it's just a thought.
My only concern, Chair, is that the hours of operation are going past 8 p.m. And so it doesn't necessarily need to be a change of use for there to be a noise impact. Does that make sense? So
right, but it's my understanding that the change of use would be accompanied by, again, the same processes that any other applicant would have to go through, and that there would be a system of checks and balances in place to counter that, unless I'm speaking out of turn.
I mean, there's a restaurant right next door that's open late. So you know, a lot of that already applies to the neighbor. I mean, condition 1.7 protects us and brings any change of, if it is a change of use, it will come back to us. If it's retail, you know, retail won't be open till 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning.
It could be.
It could be, but it's less likely.
Tony, Jennifer, are you able to weigh in kind of on the conditioning or the condition that was added here, condition 1.7?
Yes, the condition was specifically for this reason. The condition is a reminder, essentially, because this is already in the covered in the municipal code. This is a reminder that, as has been discussed here, any change of tenant, change of business, change of land use is subject to review and approval. And at that time, the review and approval does require revisiting any conditions that apply to this property, that being the noise and so forth, parking, landscaping, all those standards and operational concerns that applied then would apply now and would apply for any future. So that condition was specifically for that reason.
I would like to just also add that the uses and the requirements for each use that's laid out in our municipal code sort of take into consideration how intensive those uses are. And so the uses that are allowed, you know, by right, which are zone clearance uses that go in there with limited review. So we do look at it and we make sure that it's consistent with code. But if it doesn't require a hearing or another discretionary review, it can be done over the counter. And so those are the things like retail, like office, that really have very low impacts on neighbors. Then there's things like outdoor dining, which is got a little bit more, so staff reviews that at a higher level, but it doesn't go to a hearing. And then there's alcohol uses that would go to a hearing and other types of uses that would go to a hearing. So we sort of try to accommodate that already for all properties, regardless of whether this condition is in or not, regardless of where it is in our commercial zones. That's what those are for, those different levels of review. And that's what we're trying to capture. So, you know, I think we could potentially put a condition in that suggests a neighborhood meeting, if that's what the commission wants to do, for uses that require an administrative permit or a public hearing. But I would not want to put a neighborhood meeting requirement for a project, for a use that's allowed as a permitted use in the zoning ordinance, because those things are done generally over the counter. And that would add a lot of burden to an applicant. So typically, you know, if someone comes in for an office use or a retail use, it's a zone clearance, it happens quickly. And to do a neighborhood meeting would require them to pay for mailing labels, to pay for the mailing, to prepare everything. It would probably delay that permit by, you know, a month to 2 months, just to plan the date and time and get all of the mailings out and have the meeting. And then at that point, you know, it's not something that we condition. So it's difficult for us to respond to neighborhood comments to the degree that we can when there's a public hearing or when there's project conditions. So that's how I would weigh in on the neighborhood meeting for this project or for this decision tonight. And then for the condition 1.7, like Tony said, it's just a reminder. And then the provisions are in the code that sort of already capture that.
Thanks, Jennifer. I'm revoking my my note about the condition for a neighborhood meeting at this time based on that feedback, Jennifer. Thank you. Commissioner Lombardi, I saw you unmute.
I'm open to a neighborhood meeting, but I also don't know if it's necessary. I guess I'd be open either way to that. But I guess my question is, does condition 1.7 explicitly make it clear that the project needs to comply with the original resolution and what was included in that. And I ask that because here we are today, and there are items that are not currently accounted for. And so I realize that there are the checks, but it seems like there are things that are not there right now that would be. And that's apparent if you visit the site or if you do Google search. And so that's really where that's coming from. And I still have that concern. I also think that one thing that's unique about this site is the stacked parking, and there is potential that could create noise, and it is adjacent to neighbors, which is a little bit different than a typical restaurant or property. And so there's a little bit of unknown how much noise or traffic that could generate. It could be very seldom, or it could be something that is quite annoying. And so I would feel more comfortable having those in place, understanding that it opens up the property to more potential uses and hopefully gets it rented out, but also at the same time doesn't create another issue or concern for the community.
Thanks, Commissioner Lombardi. I have a question for staff. Are the hours of operation for this particular development permit the same that they would be for any other project on the Sunset Strip or any other development permit on the Sunset Strip? The 8 a.m. to 2 a.m., are those standard?
Hours would be 6 a.m. to 2 a.m. For any use that's not restricted. Those are the standard hours. Any business that is open between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. would be subject to an extended business hours approval, including 24 hours or whatnot. Those that are conditioned are typically restaurants, bars, nightclubs.
Great. Okay, thank you. I'm actually inclined to second Commissioner Caballero's motion as stated, without additional conditions imposed at this time. Unless anybody else has any comments, can we call the question?
You mean call a vote?
Thank you, Chair.
Yes.
Thank you.
Correct, yeah.
I very much want to approve this, but I do have the same concerns. So I just want to reiterate that. And I feel like I'd love to hear from more commissioners to understand if I'm the only one.
Fair. I guess my thinking on this, and I don't want to rush things through, so please, if we need to, wait on a vote, I'm happy to do that. I think it's my feeling that the correct kind of checks and balances are in place, and that staff has drafted the resolution in such a way that I feel like the process will be left to kind of work the way that it's supposed to, and that this will go through the appropriate channels, just as any other project would. Commissioner Dutta, go ahead.
I just wanted to concur with what you just said. I feel like the way that the staff report is written and the way condition 1.7 is written, that it does capture any of those potential issues that might come about from any potential tenants that are leasing space there, especially given that each change of tenant will have to go in front of some sort of review. So I'm comfortable with the way that it's written.
Commissioner Benson?
So my question is for Commissioner Lombardi. Are you, if I'm following correctly, is your main concern that the trees that were in the original staff conditions are not there now, and that you want to make sure that that continues to be followed?
Correct. There were two conditions in the original City Council resolution. One relating to preserving the existing tree in the front and adding a tree of 24-inch box size. It seems like the original tree is gone, but there is a new tree, but there's another location where a tree is missing. And then in the rear, there was a stipulation to have proper landscape screening. I think, again, it relates to noise and visibility with the adjacent neighbors. And There was also a note to require a tree back there, and those are not there now. And I do have confidence that the city will keep an eye on this, but I do think that if we're going to deviate from 2 decisions previously on this property, that it would be prudent for us to reiterate those facts and make sure that they're accounted for. And then I think that noise seems to be like it was one of the bigger concerns. And so I feel like if there's, I guess I feel strongly that, we have a potentially noisy stacked car situation. And so why wouldn't we put that out of check in there, given that we're making a change that's different than 2 previous decisions on this property.
So would staff be able to chime in on what measures are in place to make sure the applicant complies with the original conditions of the trees and bring that up to date?
Yes, Commissioner Vincent, the conditions, as I mentioned earlier, the conditions that are in place are still in effect and enforceable. So those if the tree is missing, that the applicant or the property owner is subject to install that, unless it was unless there was a reason between over the last 19 years where that was amended, which I'm not aware of. But if that still applies, the tree is still required. The street tree, however, that is, the city has taken over the street trees, and the street improvements have taken place since 2002, when a lot of the trees were replaced and changed to specific species, and that's part of the reason why the city's facilities division is scheduled to replace that street tree, which is one of the conditions here. However, the city would be replacing it.
So it sounds like there's still 1 tree in the rear, as well as landscaping that was part of the original approval in 2002. So what measures would be taken to make sure they comply with that?
Staff will work with the property owner to make sure that those are in place, at either at this time or when a new tenant comes in, but they are subject to those requirements. So if that tree was conditioned, it's still in effect. So they would need to install that tree if that's still applicable.
And we can let code compliance know that there's an issue with that.
Yeah, if you could please let code compliance know, that would be great. Commissioner Labarty, does that satisfy your concern?
I think if the city has confidence, yes. I feel like we could have had a 20-year-old tree back there, which would be nice, especially with the stacked parking, and that's unfortunate. I still have concerns about the noise and think that's a good idea. But if other commissioners, if the consensus is that's not needed, that's okay. But I do feel strongly on that.
Commissioner Caballero?
Yeah, in regards to the noise, Antonio, doesn't the city have a noise ordinance to protect the neighborhoods? So this will come up in any future conversation, even if it is a retailer, this will come up.
That is correct, Commissioner.
I think we're covered.
My only concern with that, Commissioner, is that we've seen this play out with other properties that get our residents complain about other properties, and yes, they can call and make the complaint, but that doesn't mean that there's not a significant impact on their quality of life. And what we're trying to do is, I don't want to call any particular properties out, but I think we just want to get in front of that and just make sure that we're not making a decision that makes it so that our residents are, constantly they can't sleep and they have to call code compliance every other night. I think we just want to make sure that I'm completely in agreement with
all the noise concerns, but it seems like there are appropriate measures in place that will allow us the opportunity to discuss this in detail, depending on what use actually occupies this building. So I totally agree with the concern, but I just feel as the staff report is written, and with the condition 1.7, I think there's going to be plenty of opportunities for us to have that conversation in the future.
Commissioner Vincent?
Thank you, Chair. I concur with Commissioner Carriero, and I'm also prepared to approve this as is.
Great, thank you. So I also just want to say that I concur with Commissioner Carviero. I think that we're covered here. I also would say that a lot of the kind of, I don't want to call them troublemaker properties, it's probably a little pejorative, but I do feel pretty strongly that a lot of those properties, it's not an apples to apples comparison because they're not on the Sunset Strip. So with that, do we feel comfortable calling the vote at this time? Looks like I have some head nodding.
Yes.
Albeit slight from some, all good, okay. David?
Thank you. Commissioner Carvalero,
Yes.
Commissioner Dutta,
Yes.
Commissioner Lombardi,
Well, I'm very on the fence of this one. I'm
I'll go to the
going to
next.
say,
I'll go to the
Okay.
next. I'll come back to you. Commissioner Thomas,
Yes.
Commissioner Vincent,
Yes.
Commissioner Lombardi,
I think I'm going to go no, understanding that this is passing, just because I do have the same concerns.
thank you, duly noted. Chair Jones,
Yes.
and the motion passes as amended. We're showing 5 ayes, 1 no, and Chair Hoopengarner as absent. We do have an appeal process for this item. The resolution the Planning Commission just approved memorializes the Commission's final action on this matter. This action is subject to appeal to the City Council. Appeals must be submitted within 10 calendar days from this date to the City Clerk's office. Appeals must be in writing and accompanied by the required fees. The City Clerk's office can provide appeal forms and information about waiver of fees.
Great, thank you, David. And
Thank you,
thank you again
Commissioners.
to staff and to the applicant's representative. Okay, we're going to move on to our next item. Again, we're a little out of order as per the agenda approval earlier in our meeting. We're moving on to new business item 11A. This is a presentation by the Coalition for Economic Survival. And I believe Mr. Eugene Maskey will be giving this presentation. Hello. I hope I pronounced your name correctly too. Please correct me if I did not.
Hi, Acting Chair, Commission members, Eugene Maskey here. Tonight, I'm speaking with you not as a colleague, as a chair of a Russian advisory board and a member for the past 5 years, but as a tenant outreach organizer for Coalition for Economic Survival, CES. We are a 40-year-old multiracial, multicultural, grassroots community-based nonprofit organization assisting, organizing, and empowering low and moderate income renters in West Hollywood, Los Angeles, and all of Southern California. CES helped to create the city of West Hollywood, led the effort to win rent control laws in West Hollywood and Los Angeles, and most of the local laws that protects tenants to this day. CES achieved all that only because of the participation of tenants. We actually encourage all tenants, everybody who's living in rent-stabilized, low or moderate income housing in West Hollywood, to become CES members and join 6,000 plus tenants all over Southern California. And we believe that power is in numbers, and we believe in standing up for each other. Our focus always has been and currently includes issues like protecting rent control, combating slum, lowered housing conditions, stopping unjust evictions and displacement, protecting neighborhoods against gentrification, preserving government-assisted low-cost housing, eradicating housing dangers such as exposure to lead and paint poisoning, and advocating for new affordable housing through political and legislative initiatives. I actually really appreciate this chance to address the Commission and bring your attention to some of the most critical problems we've been battling in our community, including tenant harassment. I'm currently working with a lot of cases where a long-term RSO tenants are being pushed by all means necessary from their tenancy. We're talking about low-income, disabled, elderly tenants and tenants being discriminated because of their sexual orientation, age, race, disability, gender, national origin, health condition, and other situations. What are we doing to help? In collaboration with the City of West Hollywood, CES provides all residents of West Hollywood with free services. And I would like to give you a brief details about a couple of them. We're doing monthly town hall educational forums where representatives from the City Rent Stabilization Division and CES talk about important current issues and answer tenants' questions. The next forum will be November 8th at 6 p.m. and everybody is absolutely welcome to join. It's an open forum for all residents. So please join us this Monday at 6 p.m. Also, in the last several months, we've added a second clinic, legal clinic, because of the demand for help. So now every Wednesday at 6 p.m., we have an exclusive West Hollywood CES Tenants' Rights Zoom clinic where anybody can register online and get a free one-on-one consultation with the best tenants' rights attorneys. Of course, we are continuing our traditional Saturday tenants' rights Zoom clinics at 10 a.m. every Saturday, with even more possibilities and even more attorneys. Usually, when I'm doing an intake with tenants before the clinic, I talk to them and I prepare them for the clinic, and then I'm doing the follow-up with tenants after the consultation with attorneys and the advice they receive. After that, I connect them to the city divisions or services like code compliance, rent stabilization, or services like mediation service, for example, or other nonprofits working with the city of West Hollywood. I also have an ability to provide them with a direct referral to Beth Sadik. It's a law firm, probably all aware of, contracted with the city of West Hollywood to provide free legal services, including full representation if they're required. When tenants need to file a tenant harassment complaint or fill out a rent decrease form, we are guiding them through the process over the phone to make sure they collect all documentation and require evidence. That often happens with tenants with disabilities, and we're always there to help them and make sure that they have anything and they have equal access to all our services and more. And speaking about equal access, we are now officially provide language support in Russian, Spanish, Farsi, and Hebrew. We also provide special accommodations during Tenants Association Zoom meetings and Tenants' Rights Zoom clinics. For example, what we have now, we tested and successfully deployed live transcription services to support our deaf tenants during weekly Tenants Association Zoom meetings. Same live transcription services are always on deck for Tenants' Rights Zoom clinics on Wednesdays and Saturdays. I'd also like to mention that all of our services that we have are easily accessible. One good thing that came out of the pandemic is that everybody had to learn or try to learn how to use Zoom and other digital technologies. So for safety reasons and to make everything more safe during the pandemic, we are doing everything possible to make accessibility and safety our priority. So everybody can connect to our clinics and receive help via Zoom. Both clinics are available via Zoom or phone. So we are not only making it accessible, but also making it safe and comfortable. And also we're making considerable efforts when it comes to digital divide, which is one of the main issues when it comes to service accessibility. And we are making sure that all tenants can access our services. So if you know of anybody who needs our help, please let them know that they can register online and request a link to register for the clinics on Wednesday or Saturdays. And they can send an email to helpingvihorenters@gmail.com or call my direct line. I actually pick up my phone, 213-252-4411. My extension is 205. 213-252-4411. My extension 205. I really appreciate this chance to talk to you, commissioners, and to provide you with this information about our CS services that we provide to all the residents of West Henley. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Maysky.
I'm ready
please
to
go ahead.
answer any questions if you have anything for me.
Great, thank you. I just want to make sure that it's noted for the record where people can find you online if they do have access to the internet. It is cesinaction.org, correct?
Absolutely, yes.
Great, thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Maysky at this time? Commissioner Lombardi? No?
Oh, no, sorry, I do not, but
It's,
thank you.
it's okay,
And thank
you're
you
allowed
for
to
the
make your hand.
presentation.
Absolutely. If no one has any questions, Mr. Maysky, thank you so much for the work that you do and for visiting us tonight. Thanks very much for that information. I hope members of the community will find it resourceful.
I appreciate the chance to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much. All right, we have come to the point of the meeting where Commissioner Caballero will need to recuse. I would actually recommend, I would like to propose that we take a quick bathroom break, dog walk break, whatever you'd like, and Commissioner Caballero can depart. Commissioner Caballero, and I guess staff too, do you need to officially state your recusal at this point in the meeting, or?
I understand, yes, yeah. I want to say thank you for the robust conversation tonight. I totally appreciate all the commissioners' comments, and I need to recuse myself because I have projects on the Sunset Billboard program. So everybody have a great evening, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We will see you in 5 minutes, which would be 8:03. Do you want longer? Is that enough time? Okay, great. We'll see you in 5 minutes. Thanks. Okay, everyone, if you can turn your cameras on, we're going to resume the meeting. Hi, Robin Eason. We're just, we'll wait a minute for oh, there she is. Okay, we're minus one less head than Commissioner Cavallaro, but I believe we are ready to move forward. So with that, we will move to item 10A. This is 9165 to 9169 Sunset Boulevard, officially continued from Thursday, August 19th and Thursday, October 7th. This is a request for a new billboard above a cultural resource at the address previously stated. And I will turn this over to staff to give their presentation.
Good evening, Chair Jones and commissioners. Let me see if I can share my screen. For the record, Jennifer Davis, contract planner for Planning and Development Services. This item before you tonight is for a new billboard over the building at 9165-69 Sunset Boulevard. It involves a number of permits, a sign permit for the new billboard, a certificate of appropriateness for the historic building itself, a zoning map amendment to place this property in a development agreement overlay zone, and a development agreement, which actually details the approvals and vested rights of the project. It's being reviewed under the Sunset Boulevard offsite signage policy. Orange Barrel Media is the billboard operator for this application, and the site is located near the northwest corner of Quarry and Sunset, just as Sunset Boulevard begins to dip south towards Beverly Hills. The subject property is developed with a 3-story commercial building that was constructed in 1936. It's known as the Berman Kohner Building. Just a really nice example of the Regency Revival style of architecture, and it was designed by Paul Revere Williams, a master architect. Designated a cultural resource in May 2018. Currently, there's no billboard on the property. There was a large billboard or Berman Firs sign that was erected in 1939 and mounted on the roof. You can see the picture here. The sign was replaced in 1953, and then sometime between 1960 and 1969, it was removed. The billboard design, though, does take its inspiration from this Berman Firs sign, gantry sign. There are essentially three elements to the proposal. The static element, which in this view is the HBO Max element on the right, is the principal component of the sign. The LED sticks, as we've been calling them, or panel to the left, serves to help embellish the ad campaign for the static element. So that's the large piece on the left. The gantry sign structure itself, which you see behind both of those elements, is a portion of the overall proposal, and it is conditioned to have a part of that being visible for each ad campaign. This drawing shows the dimensions of the overall sign, and for the OBM Media logo sign at the bottom right, where you see it's 14 feet by 10 inches. The static element has a maximum of 600 square feet, and the LED panels are 900 square feet. So the total sign area for this billboard would be 1,500 square feet. This view shows the tall wall at 9201 and also the newly approved billboard at 9157 in the sort of gray tubular one. The blue outline you see there above the pedestrian sign is the outline of this proposal. Now, you can see the proximity between the tall wall and the previously approved billboard at 9157. And given this juxtaposition or this proximity to these two, the applicant has made some revisions to accommodate requests from either one of those. So although this proposal was originally set for the Planning Commission's review in August, the applicant asked to have it continued so they could make some changes to accommodate these requests. These changes were subsequent to the review by the Sunset Arts Subcommittee. Just wanted to note that. Between the two, basically, the billboard was moved back from Sunset. It was realigned to be in alignment with the same angle as the 9157 billboard. It was raised up 2 feet, and the LED panel section was made just a bit squatter. Sort of a squatter shape. Those are the main differences between the previous plans and what's currently before you. This is a view of the billboard at night. The static element in this case is the Coke bottle and the bubbles there. The LED sticks or panels, they will stay in that same configuration, although the content of that will change with each ad campaign to support the static element on each new ad campaigns that comes through. Oops. In keeping with the category that it was awarded in, this billboard will have limited motion capabilities. While it will not have full or fluid digital capabilities, the LED sticks will allow some animated motion sufficient enough to support and relate to the main static element of the sign. So in this view, the Bugs Bunny cartoon would be the limited motion on the LED in support of HBO, given that the Bugs Bunny cartoon would be available to watch on the HBO. In this way, the LED panels and the static element, they're really intrinsically linked. Here's another example. So the actresses on this ad for Big Little Lies, there would be probably some movement, and that is in keeping with HBO, which is, of course, an entertainment company. This diagram shows the overall heights. So from grade to the top of the sign is about 80 feet. And there's about 11 feet between the top of the roof and the bottom of the billboard sign. Now we have a few views of the billboard in context. So this is westbound at night, and you can see the 2 billboards side by side. The 9165 is the one on the left. This is the same view just during the day. These drawings show the billboards in context. So you see on the top right where it says view north, that is the tall wall, 9165, and then the 9157. Each billboard must do a view analysis. I've selected a few of these to show these billboards in context. This is an eastbound view, and it's about 400 feet from the project. So the yellow on this view is the proposed billboard. The pink and the blue are the 9157 billboard. This is from the westbound, also approximately 400 feet from the proposed building. In this view, you barely see the top of the 9165. And that's that little bit of yellow sticking out. This is westbound 1,250 feet from the project. And in this case, the project is not visible. The Historic Preservation did review this item on June 28th of this year and unanimously recommended approval of the Certificate of Appropriateness. During that discussion and review, the Preservation Commission reviewed the rear, there's a small rear structure, and this was determined not to be historic and that it could be reconfigured to accommodate both the pole structure and new restroom facilities. So at that time, the HPC requested that the Planning Commission consider limiting the facade projections on the building just for city programming. And since that time, the plans have been revised to eliminate those facade projections. So with that, staff's recommendation is to approve the project by adopting resolutions 21-1381, 1382, and 1383, basically approving the sign permit, the certificate of appropriateness, zoning map amendment, and the development agreement, allowing a new billboard at 9165-69 Sunset Boulevard. I'm available for questions, and I know that the applicant would like to present a short presentation as well.
Thank you, Jennifer. Again, do we have any questions of staff from commissioners at this time? Again, I'd ask that we limit these to questions about items contained in the staff report. This is not questions that might indicate how you may vote on this item or any kind of deliberation. Do we have questions for Jennifer at this time? Commissioner Lombardi? Sorry, Commissioner Dutta, you guys put your hand up at the same time. You're next.
Thank you, Acting Chair Jones. I have a hopefully quick question. I just wanted to make sure I'm understanding. During the concept award process, was this project designated as a static sign or a digital sign? I think I'm seeing that it was a digital sign. Can you confirm?
No, it was not a full digital sign, but I'm going to defer to Brian on that one because he's very adept at answering these questions.
Yeah, the applicant submitted the concept as is presented here. So it was a fixed element, which is the primary advertisement, supported by LED sticks that did allow some, complementary digital programming for the main, static element. The category itself was a creative and static category, which for things that kind of fell out of the normal categories allowed creative submissions like this one.
Okay, so it's mostly static. It has a digital component. It sounds like there might be some motion associated with that, but it's a static sign.
Correct, it is a static sign.
Okay. That's my only question.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Dutta?
Thanks. So my question had to do with the public and arts programming piece of it, the 96 hours. I know we have one rendering that essentially just showed the LED stick component of the sign being used for the public and arts programming. Is that what's envisioned at this point? Is my question premature? That only that portion of the sign would be used for the public and arts programming?
No, I believe that, and this is up to our arts division, arts commission, that the full capabilities of the sign, whether it's affixing a artistic fixed element that's supported by LED sticks, could be utilized when it is in its city content mode.
Okay, great. Then the last question I had, it's my understanding that the static component, calculating the square footage of it, the 600 square footage, it's more so that it fits within kind of a box. But I know that the various images that we've seen show that static image, of all different shapes and sizes. So if you can clarify exactly how that the right-hand portion of the billboard sign would be calculated.
Right. That it's the maximum amount is 600 square feet, but the shape of that and what the image and the component, the static component, can change and vary. It just can't be greater than 600 square feet.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions for staff at this time? It looks like not. So with that,
I have one, Acting Chair Jones.
Go ahead, please.
A quick follow-up question on Commissioner Dutta's questions. Staff, could someone confirm, either Brian or Jennifer, could you please confirm how many days the advertising is available for public arts programs? Because I'm just thinking about the fixed component, not the digital component, and that seems to be an extensive effort for not a lot of time.
Yeah, it's at least 96 hours a year that is reserved for it. There could be other opportunity with projection on the building, which, while they can't be utilized for advertisements, actually could be used as an art component as well, which might be a less costly way to project and include art on there. But that is all subject to, again, our arts division and our arts commission, which approves the programming, the schedule, and the actual content of what goes on there. We reserve it in the development agreement, and then it's up to those entities to actually do the programming and content delivery.
Okay, thank you for the clarification, Brian. With regards to the 96 hours, right? With regards to the 96 hours, I guess the other question I have is, would the architectural lighting or integral lighting within the fixed component be potentially just turned off at that time? Somehow try to transfer the focus away? Okay.
Yeah, and again, these are decisions that will be made with the arts folks. When the project, should it be built, we give them the full technical specifications of that project. And then we, either with in-house work or through contracted work, help bridge the gap between what an artist could do. This came from a conversation today, based on the technical capabilities and what that artist would like to do with it. So meaning we would probably give them the full range of what is possible on that sign. And then it's a broker conversation between the artist, the arts division, and then the property owner, how that would actually be delivered.
Okay, and this just reminded me of one other point that was brought up during the staff report, which was the HPC review of this project. And there was a point of view on the architectural lighting. Could you just maybe help rehash that so that we understand?
There was discussion on the facade projections, which wasn't originally a part of this project. Has since been taken out, although it could be added back in for the art programming. But they were actually projections from the third story parapet onto the top of onto the face of the building at the top. And the Preservation Commission wasn't in tune with that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for staff at this time? Okay, it looks like not. So normally at this time, and I would like to do it this way because I feel like the public, before the applicant presents, I want them to have all of the information they would glean from the staff report. So normally, as chair of Sunset Arts and Advertising Subcommittee, which for anyone who may have just joined the meeting or who isn't familiar, is the design review body for all of the new billboard projects on Sunset Boulevard. I would give a subcommittee report, but this was now in January, was the meeting when we had this, and it's actually not available on video. We didn't have protocols in place yet at that time. So I am going to defer to Mr. Brian Eck to give us a quick summary of what we discussed at that meeting.
Yeah, happy to do that. I have my notes from that meeting. So as you mentioned, the project was reviewed at the Sunset Arts and Advertising Subcommittee of the Planning Commission on January 14th, 2021 by the 3-member body. The subcommittee was generally supportive of the design, especially appreciative of the historic nature of the gantry sign, meaning the sign structure, and the relationship to the historic Berman fir sign from the 1920s when the building was initially built. We had positive comments on the format of the sign, meaning the fixed element with digital support was as noted as a unique among anything that has been proposed on Sunset or a part of the program. The members agreed that maintenance of the sign would be important, as well as the building. Comments were also made about the angle of the billboard in relationship to both Sunset Boulevard and the neighboring billboard at 9157 Sunset. And finally, the committee expressed concern about the request for building projections, but we've covered this. Those have been since removed by the applicant and only allowed during the city art content allocation time.
Great, thanks so much. And finally, before the applicant presents or the applicant's representative presents, I would like to do disclosures from commissioners. I will disclose that I had a video call with the applicant's representative, Aaron Green and Tina Vartanian, and we discussed items contained in the staff report. It was a pretty quick meeting. Commissioner Dutta?
I too had a Zoom call with the applicant's representative, and all items discussed were in the staff report.
Great, thank you. Any other disclosures? Commissioner Thomas?
Yes, I had a Zoom call with the applicant's representatives, and everything we discussed was included in the staff report.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Lombardi?
Same here, same as the other commissioners. I had a Zoom call and discussed items included within the staff report.
Thank you. Commissioner Vincent, I don't want to single you out. If you don't have a disclosure, that's completely fine. Okay. All right, great. With that, I will open up the floor to the applicant's representative for the presentation. Please do, just because some of us don't know you and members of the public most certainly or almost certainly do not, please state your name and city of residence when you speak. Thank you.
Good evening, Acting Chair Jones. My name is Aaron Green. I'm president of the AFRIA Consulting Group here representing the applicant this evening, along with Yumna Siddiqui, who is the Director of Design for Orange Barrel Media, the sign company for this project. If Yumna, you'd be kind enough to share your screen. So I just want to start by acknowledging and thanking staff for the time that they've spent with us. This has been perhaps we're having a smidge of technical difficulty.
It's very, I do apologize. I was able to share the screen just fine earlier during the test. There you go. I apologize for that.
Thank you. So as I was mentioning, wanted to start by thanking staff for the time they've spent with us on this. As Acting Chair Jones mentioned, we heard this back in January at the subcommittee, and we've been spending a robust amount of time refining the sign since that time, working with staff and our neighbors to get where we are today. Next slide, please. You know, I will say, I personally have the privilege of working on, did the slide advance? I'm sorry, folks.
We're still in, I just see the front, which matches the plans that we got in with our staff report, the packets.
Acting Chair, I'm sorry, if you could hold our time for just one moment while we figure this out. Perfect.
Sure. We can see the historic photo now.
Great, thank you. You know, I was just going to say, unique is an overused term. I've probably misused that term in the past, but I think it's really applicable, and I'm going to use it this evening. What we have seen and what I have the privilege of sharing with you along with Yumna this evening is something that doesn't exist anywhere else, not just in West Hollywood, but anywhere else in the country. And I feel really grateful to be part of this project. You know, the owner of the building who's with us tonight, Reagan Silver, he lives a proverbial stone's throw away from this property. And as was mentioned, he purchased it a couple of years ago, really has put a lot of heart and soul, shoe leather, elbow grease, and money into this building to bring it back to what it was. Next slide, please. When you're standing in front of this building, you can feel the energy and just how much has happened there, what is special that's happened there. And when you walk through the front door, you know, it is beautifully adorned on the inside in a way that's stunning, but it's also subtle and it's also delicate, much like the sign that we're proposing this evening. In addition to being a Paul Williams work and one of his finest commercial works, there has been a tremendous amount that's happened actually at this building and who the tenants have been. The third floor, just by way of example, where Orange Barrel has its West Hollywood headquarters, used to be Orson Welles' office. As you can tell, I'm kind of glowing about this building a little bit, but we've got 10 minutes. So I'm going to stop and hand this over to Yumna to talk about the sign itself. Thank you.
Yumna, you're muted. If you can unmute and just state your name and city
Sorry,
of your
I
residence.
really apologize for my technical issues.
It's okay. It happens to me at least once a day on Zoom calls.
Yeah,
Please go
you
ahead.
have 8 minutes remaining.
We really drew a lot of our inspiration from the original Behrman First sign. And there were key qualities of that sign that we wanted to maintain in our design. We love the feeling of lightness that came from the sign's transparency, the exposed gantry structure, and those custom letters. And we were also inspired by classic neon spectaculars. We're really excited by the way that these lighting effects supplemented a static sign and made it something really unique. So we wanted to make sure that our sign also spoke to the contemporary scale of Sunset. So Sunset Boulevard has become obviously more dense around our site since it was originally built, and it continues to evolve. So very soon the sign will be sandwiched, or the site will be sandwiched between the tall wall at 9201 and the approved digital at 9157. So our reinterpretation of a classic neon spectacular is a one-of-a-kind static that's highly customizable. So it consists of a gantry structure, and attached to that is the three-dimensional illuminated element. Here you see the Coke bottle. And this will be developed unique for each advertising campaign, and it's really the core of the sign. And that will be complemented with the LED stick lighting, which will have that same effect as a lighting in those old neon spectaculars. It'll support the static messaging. And the design also maintains some of the core aesthetic qualities of the Behrman First sign. It maintains the sculptural form of those individual elements, and it also maintains the transparency of the original design, of the original sign. So a portion of the gantry will always be exposed, and the LED stick is constructed of a series of individual rows of LED diodes, which will allow light to pass through. And I'll speak more to that in a bit. Each element in the sign will be separately controlled. So the static element, the orange barrel identification, and the LED stick will be separately controlled. And as mentioned, the LED stick also allows us to periodically display art and historic content so we can really engage with the Western Gateway. Oops. So the site is on the western end of the Sunset Strip. Here's the existing condition and the future condition. And the proposed sign is really going to be a contributor to a memorial, like a really memorable Western Gateway. And the other thing about this sign is because it's such a unique construction, the advertisers that we work with are going to continually have to develop one-of-a-kind advertising campaigns. So the content on the sign will also be unique and fresh. So as we looked in the westbound direction, this is the existing, we worked to ensure that the sign was really kind of tucked away and didn't conflict with our neighbors. So the blue outline, if I kind of toggle back, you'll see the blue outline is the existing sign for 9157. I apologize. And then that gray structure is their proposed. So you can see our sign is quite small. And from this vantage, it's actually tucked behind that walk sign. And as mentioned, the static component will be inscribed in a 600 square foot rectangle, and it'll sit next to the LED stick. So, collectively the sign area will be no more than 1,500 square feet. And so finally, a little bit about the LED stick. LED stick is often referred to as transparent LED. The product, and it consists of rows of individual LED diodes that are mounted on these sticks. The product we're looking at is a 16 millimeter at 32 millimeter LED. So what that means is that the strips themselves will be 0.7 inches wide, and between those will be a 0.62 inch gap. So the result is about a 40% transparency. And this product is typically used on glass facades. So if you look at the right, this is a view from inside a building, and it's used to allow light to pass through an LED sign. It's not something that's typically used for billboards. And the reason is, you're missing every other pixel, and also, so it gives you much less visual intensity, and the light is passing through. But, we have this unique sign where the LED is actually complementing the static component. So it allows us to use the product in a new way.
3 minutes remaining.
Thank you, Yumna. Just a couple of closing thoughts. When we think about this sign and I sort of reflect back on the discussions in front of the commission and the council over the last several years about signage, one of the core goals of the city's new sign program was to create financial incentives for property owners who have historic buildings to maintain and enliven those buildings with investment. And when we consider this sign, I mean, this is really the embodiment of a success there. Not only is it a vehicle to help preserve financially this building, but also, I mean, it pushes and really creates an entirely unique sign typology in a way that just hasn't existed before. If there's going to be a place where this new sign typology exists, it should be on the Sunset Strip. This is what, for years, the council, staff, and this commission have really been driving towards. As Jennifer mentioned briefly, we have a limited ability to do motion on the LED side of this sign in a way that becomes in service to the fixed element. There are parameters around what that motion is like. So what that does is it allows us to deliver to city and the city family a level of predictability, but we still have the flexibility to do this in a dynamic way so that it doesn't hamper the creative juices of the folks that are going to be designing this one-off sign. One of the things just wanted to mention, we are grateful to our neighbors who we've had really fruitful conversations with to be able to work with you. Sunset's a complicated place, and being able to cite and fit something exactly right, especially something that really pushes the envelope, but at the same time is delicate, and fitting that into the urban context, it's challenging. And we're grateful that our neighbors and staff and everybody really worked with us on this. And so, I mean, I guess just in closing, I would ask the commission, to consider the requests that are before you this evening, both the sign itself, the sign permit, as well as the development agreement and the certificate of appropriateness. And we truly are grateful for your time. Myself, Yumna, as well as the full project team, we're here to answer any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aaron. Again, unless anyone feels strongly, I'd like to hold questions from commissioners until after we've heard public comment and the applicant's rebuttal. If that's okay. Again, if anyone feels strongly, please raise your hand or, nod your head vigorously or something. It looks like not. Okay. In that case, I would ask Mr. Gillig if we have any public speakers on this item.
Thank you, Chair. I received no public comment forms on this item. If there is anybody on the platform with us that would like to speak and make a comment, please star 9 for me at this time. And we'll give you 3 minutes to speak and comment on this project. And Chair, it looks like we are all clear for this one too.
Great, thank you. With that, I will allow the applicant, should they so wish, to either continue the presentation or to, rebut. Although I don't know what you'd be rebutting. And we can keep the public comment portion of the hearing open, and commissioners can ask questions. I defer to you in terms. You do have 5 minutes, so I want to make sure that you have that if you need it.
I appreciate it. We've concluded our presentation. We don't have anything to rebut, and we thank you and the commission for the time.
Thank you. Questions from commissioners for the applicant's representative? Commissioner Lombardi. I was waiting for you to raise your hand, and I mean that in the nicest way.
Unless anyone else wants to go first, I would greatly appreciate that. If there are any other questions. Okay. So I guess one question I have is how, for the applicant, how are you planning to use the digital component? You have any added thoughts on that? Like how much movement might be happening during an ad campaign?
Commissioner, thank you for the question. I think, and I'll provide like sort of a theoretical example in a moment, but I think one of the things is we look at this, we have ideas, but we're not exactly sure because, as I had mentioned earlier, this sign typology doesn't exist. So if we are privileged enough to get your approval and to be able to build this sign and go out to the market, we're going to sort of provide a creative palette, if you will. But, look to those who are really in the creative space on the advertising side to do something and give us ideas, specifically to try to sort of paint a visual picture, hearkening back to the Coke bottle that we all saw at the beginning of the presentation. One of the examples might be the bubbles that we saw, those little circles sort of maybe like coming up with the rest of the background fixed, or the Coke sort of pouring down, if you will. So there's a component of the background that might be fixed, but then you might see some of that Coke pouring down into the glass, something like that. It ends up being slow because of the limitations of this technology, you know, on a screen like the laptop screen that we're looking at, or an LED billboard. It's sharp and it's crisp. Here, because it's light and transparent, as Yumna said, you know, there's spacing in between each LED diode. Functionally, it won't have a visual quality that will embrace really fast moving motion. And so in effect, we'll end up having something that feels slow and light to complement, again, whatever that fixed element of advertising is. I hope that was not too vague, but did give some space into where the envelope that we're looking to fit into.
Thank you. I appreciate your take on that, and it does help to understand where this may be headed. I have another question. I guess it's sort of maybe also a design suggestion. Is that okay, Acting Chair Jones? I think you're muted.
I am, sorry. I think I would prefer that we do that in deliberation. And if the applicant wants to respond, then we can open the public comment portion of the hearing back up, if that's okay with you.
Sure, it might be good to hear from the applicant as well, but happy to do it either way. So that's acceptable.
Okay. Do we have any other questions for the applicant at this time from commissioners? Okay, I did have a quick question, Aaron, that pertains to Commissioner Lombardi's question. And again, I recognize that because this sign typology doesn't exist, it's hard to say, but I think as a point of reference, would this be like a GIF or a GIF, which is technically the right pronunciation, but whatever. Is there any indication of, I think it's just hard to visualize what exactly it would look like without kind of knowing what the capability of the LED sticks are.
Acting Chair, when you say a GIF, do you mean sort of like the fixed, like a static image, if you will?
It's not a static image. It's like a kind of like what's the best way to describe it?
Oh, yes. I know what you're talking about. I think that is somewhat close to, I think, what the experience would be like. Like the nuance could be a little different, right? Like because, for example, the full background might not be moving in the same way that when I get a text message of like Michael from the office, there's sort of like a bunch of different stuff happening around him, right? But it sort of might have that same feel to it.
Okay, and I guess I should have been more specific just in that GIFs can take many forms, but I think more of like a stop motion video or several different frames. So, okay. Any other questions for the applicant at this time? Applicant's representative, sorry. Okay, if not, I will close the public comment portion of the hearing. We can move into deliberation. Commissioner Lombardi, I do want to allow you to ask your question or give your design recommendation. Would you like to go first?
Sure, yeah, I would love to, and then I'll sit back. I might have another comment or just like to provide my opinion on the project. But to go to my question / suggestion, so it sounds like the video component is looking to have this nice sort of transparency to kind of blend in with the background, but yet to also be an element that's visible. And so I think in the world of architecture, oftentimes black is a good finish to let things kind of disappear, but it depends on the context. So in this case with the video or I guess LED stick component, I should say, there's the sky background and or some greenery. There's also the LEDs themselves. And so I'm just wondering if perhaps a gray finish might be better. That might help it kind of blend in a little bit more with the ambient environment and or what's happening with the LED lighting. And I understand there's the gantry component, and that probably wants to have that sort of classic metallic, black sort of look to it. And so maybe it's a matter of defining which parts want to be seen and which ones want to kind of blend in. But I saw that one photograph in the presentation of the LED sticks where it was on a black background. And my suggestion would be to see if it could be like a matte gray material and take it outside, look at it in the sun, look at it on, see how that looks. And that might actually yield an overall better final design that's more in line with the vision that you're showing. So that was my suggestion. But I'd be curious to hear from the applicant, and it's just a suggestion.
To that end, let me reopen the public comment portion of the hearing, and we'll step out of deliberation for just a moment so the applicant can respond.
Thank you, Commissioner. So this question is a bit outside or above my pay grade. I believe, I'll let Yumna speak to this. I think it's something we could certainly look at. What is the exact right shade, color, and texture? But I would like Yumna to respond, please.
Sure. And I think, it is a highly custom product. It's also a fairly technical product, right? So they've engineered it to be as narrow as it can and all of that. So we can speak to the manufacturer. To my knowledge, LEDs don't come in different shades. So certainly the interface of it that's kind of functional is probably set. So we can explore that. We just have to weigh that against the, having a reliable product as well. We'll look into it.
Usually like an LED strip would come in like oftentimes like an anodized or natural metal finish versus a matte black finish. And so it might be a matter of just going to that kind of finish. If that looks like it would help achieve your vision, that's my suggestion to consider that and look into it.
Thanks, Commissioner Lombardi. All right, I'm going to close the public comment portion of the hearing again and reopen our comments for deliberation. Who would like to speak next? Also, you don't have to speak. Commissioner Dutta, go ahead.
No, I'm happy to speak. I don't have a lot of comments. I am in support of this project. I think that it really kind of brings in that last element of this building's history back to it in a way that is modernized, that pays homage to what the history was of the building itself. And I think the technology, the fact that this is uncharted territory in terms of the setup, the LED strips, just something that we haven't seen here in West Hollywood or anywhere else. I think this is the perfect location to do something like this. I really commend the applicant's ability to work with the two neighboring properties to come up with a solution that is mutually agreeable for all parties. And that shows in the ultimate design and the letter of support that we received from one of the neighboring properties as well. So I am in support of this project.
Thank you, Commissioner Dutta. I think I saw Commissioner Thomas's hand go up.
You did, Chair. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I also want to say that I'm happy that the applicant was able to work with their neighbors to reach a mutual agreement to ensure that all projects were in full view. I think this project is a way to bridge the gap and tell the story of historic Sunset, and the juxtaposition of this sign and the gantry sign is interesting, and the type of innovative digital applications is interesting. I do think compared to some of the other billboards we've approved, this kind of pales in comparison, but I also think this is going to make sure that this historic resource is going to thrive as a fixture on Sunset. So I'm inclined to approve and motion the approval of a development agreement, zoning map amendment, sign permit, and certificate of appropriateness.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. We do have a motion on the floor. We have 3 commissioners, including myself, who have not yet spoken, actually 2. Commissioner Vincent, do you have, is there anything you want to, and I don't want to put you on blast if you don't want to, that's fine too.
Thanks, Chair. I concur. I'm also in support of this project. I think it's very respectful to the history of this building and respectful to its neighbors. And I commend them in taking, making modifications based on the Historic Preservation Commission and subcommittee comments. So I think it's a real creative design with the static element that you can kind of do anything with. And I'm really interested to see what advertisers do with this billboard. And it's real creative design and a completely different way of advertising on a billboard. And I commend them for that.
Great, thank you. I will finish up. Oh, Commissioner Lombardi, go ahead.
Sure, thank you. I'll just be brief, but I also think this is an interesting and fairly unconventional approach to signage. It's clean and simple. It's a concept that is also a little bit unique, but I think it will stand the test of time. And perhaps with the historic nature of the structure below, it's kind of a nice complement in that it has that historical reference to gantry signage, but also doesn't sort of overtake the beautiful structure that's below. So I'm in full support of this project. I think it's a really wonderful project, and I really appreciate that the outreach was made to the neighboring property and to do as much as possible to reach out to the community and make sure that the best possible design is here. And I appreciate the changes that have been made to accommodate that, because there have been some. So I wanted to acknowledge that too.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Lombardi. I'll just wrap up with a couple of quick comments. I do have one question for staff before I give just a few comments. Just for posterity, can you advise about the nature of the billboard that's immediately next to this project that's proposed to go in? Is it digital or is it?
Yeah, that project at 9157 is a digital project. It was approved by the City Council earlier this year. I don't have any indication about when that project will be constructed, but it has been fully approved.
That's what I thought. Okay, I just wanted to make sure it was clear kind of what the streetscape will look like should this move forward. Again, I'll keep my comments brief. I would just like to say that it would be really helpful for applicants, you're not gonna be able to see this, but when you give renderings, like the house on Sunset, like people don't, I know what that is, but a lot of people don't. And I think it would just be helpful if applicants going forward could just make sure that the address of the project is listed on the plans. That would be really helpful. I think favorably reviewed this billboard when it came before us at SASE 11 short months ago. Really appreciate the nod to the historic, gantry work there, certainly. I'm also, I think, and this has been resolved, but, I think we were aligned with HPC's recommendation that there not be any advertising projected onto the facade of the building. So I'm glad to hear that that's not happening. It's off the table. And I just hope that, once, should this move forward, you're about to find out, that the eventual activations on this site are as interesting as some of the ones that you presented. I think I can only speak for myself, but I think I was particularly charmed by the Coca-Cola rendering and thought that was really interesting and unique. And I hope that advertisers can find cool ways to, engage with kind of the nature of this sign. I actually, in talking to staff today about this item, want to just give Rick Abramson, our UDAS, I'm just going to call it UDAS. He's the head of our city office of the city architect, and I think he surfaced a point that I do think is worth mentioning here. I don't know that it needs to be addressed, but we have a lot of new billboards coming into the city. And I want to acknowledge that I think it's been a little bit frustrating, maybe a lot, I'm not privy to those workings, for applicants who, are kind of being asked to plan around projects that maybe don't exist yet, or are still in concept. So to that end, I know that the applicant had referred to this on several occasions as a gateway. And I think I haven't heard that mentioned during this hearing, but, especially given that this is under development agreement, I think, we do have a city gateway, an official city gateway that's in conversation right now. And I think I just want to make sure that when we're thinking about these development agreements as they're being formulated, that there are, the applicants are waiving any claims to long distance view blockage that might occur, within the curvature of the street. I think I just want to get ahead of any claims by, digital media companies in the out of home space about view blockage. And, we have, I think, upwards of 30 signs going in on Sunset. So I just want to surface that for and read it into the record. And with that, I am prepared to second the motion. And now I'm completely forgetting who motioned. Was it Commissioner Thomas? Great, thank you. I am prepared to second that motion and move this project forward, unless there's any other comments from commissioners or questions. And I'll just pause briefly to see if any of the floating heads are giving me a nod or a head shake. No, looks like we can go ahead and call the question and move into vote.
Thank you. Commissioner Thomas?
Yes.
Commissioner Vincent?
Yes.
Commissioner Lombardi?
Yes.
Commissioner Data?
David, did you say my name? If you did, I didn't.
Data?
Oh, yeah, I thought I said yes. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Chair Jones?
Yes.
And the motion passes with 5 ayes, noting Commissioner Carvalero recused and Chair Huppengarner absent. There is no appeal process. This is a recommendation to City Council.
Great, thank you. So moving right along here. So next we will go to, again, it should have been item 11, but we heard that earlier. So that was new business, that's passed. Item 12A is unfinished business, there is none. Item 13 is excluded consent calendar, there is none. I will look to Robin for items from staff, our planning manager's update.
Thank you, Commissioner. Jen, did you have?
Just one thing, did we need to open the item 10C in order to, 10.
Oh, 10B, that's a great question. That's a great question. Is that a leading question, Dan? What should I have surfaced it? I think
Isaac is ready to weigh in.
Yeah, Acting Chair, I think it's best if we're going to continue it that Acting Chair could request a motion to open the public hearing and continue that specific item, and then take a roll call vote.
Thank you for clarification on that. Really appreciate it. Okay, so toggling back here to item 10B. Again, this is 8730 Sunset Boulevard. This was a public hearing to consider a request to remodel the north facade of the building and construct a new 2-sided billboard on the facade located at the address previously stated here in our fair, West Hollywood. Staff is recommending or requesting a continuance for this item, not as it is written in the agenda packet, the November 18th meeting, but actually to the December 2nd meeting, which is the meeting, not the next meeting, but the meeting after that. Can I get a motion to move this forward to the December 2nd meeting? Commissioner Dutta, do I have a second? Commissioner Lombardi? Thank you. And David, I think we can call the vote.
Thank you. Commissioner Dutta?
Yes.
Commissioner Lombardi,
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas,
Yes.
Commissioner Vincent,
Yes.
Chair Jones,
Yes.
and the motion passes, noting 5 ayes, Commissioner Carvalero and Chair Hippengarner as absent on this item. And this is officially continued to December 2nd, 2021. At which
Great.
time I believe staff will want to have this legally renoticed.
Great. Thank you, David. So again, moving back to item 14, items from staff, our planning managers update.
Thank you, Acting Chair. Before I get into what's on the next couple of agendas, I just wanted to let the commission know that Long Range has been reprioritizing our work plan to start to tackle the vast list of zone text amendments, including one related to the housing category types that Commissioner Jones had mentioned, I believe, in one of the meetings in October. So we are planning to bring some of those back in early 2022, but I just wanted to give the commission an update that those are back in queue, and we've added some additional staff capacity to get through some of those. So moving into what's coming up on the next couple of meetings for the November 18th meeting. Right now we have one project, an EIR for 8555 Santa Monica Boulevard. And then for the December 2nd meeting, we have the project that was just continued, 8730 Sunset Boulevard. We have a residential project at Crescent Heights Methodist Church located at 1282 North Fairfax Avenue. We have a urgency ordinance related to Senate Bill 9. And we will also discuss upcoming Planning Commission and subcommittee meeting dates for 2022. Jennifer, did you have anything to add on your end?
Yes. Sorry, I'm just getting myself, I should have gotten myself organized. Okay. I just wanted to speak to something that Commissioner Thomas brought up earlier about the neighborhood meetings. And just to reiterate that we have certain code sections that dictate when neighborhood meetings are required. And so if that were to change on a consistent basis, that would need to be a zone text amendment. So that's something that we would need to receive, that we would have direction to do, or that we would take forward to change in the municipal code. It's not something that we can necessarily just decide to do differently. There are certain instances where we will ask that there's more outreach than is required, perhaps if we feel like that needs to happen. But if it's on a consistent basis or something that we're requiring of applicants as a neighborhood meeting, then that's something that we would need to change in the code. So I don't know if there's any other questions about that item. Then maybe we can agendize it or talk about it at a later date. But just wanted to clarify that we hear you and we understand that there's that desire out there. It's just we have our set of rules that we're working with, and so if we wanted to change those, then we can discuss that.
And Jennifer, how would we agendize that? Would we speak with the chair of when there's room on the agenda, or how would that happen?
That's a good question. I think I always get myself confused on this. I think you can make a motion to put something on a future agenda. And maybe Isaac, you can confirm if that's the right course of action.
I think probably best if there's just interest from the commission to put some sort of discussion on public hearing item and maybe take a formal, I wouldn't recommend taking a formal motion on tonight's meeting to do so. And we can certainly on our end, on staff's end, look at if there's a specific parliamentary procedure, but I think barring that, it could just go on a future item as a discussion item and receive direction moving forward, including the policies for how to institute that kind of change.
Thank you. And that's all I had. Acting Chair.
You're on mute.
Muted, Chair.
Sorry, guys. David, do we have any public speakers? Item 15 is public comment.
Chair, I received no public speakers. I don't think there's anyone left on the platform. If there is, *9 for me really quick. And we'll give you an opportunity to speak for 3 minutes. And Chair, it looks like we are all clear.
Great, thank you. Item 16 is items from commissioners. Do we have anything? No. Well, I did want to note that Commissioner Hoopengarner has asked me to advise everyone to be doubly cautious in their COVID precautions at this time. Please get vaccinated. If you have not been, get your booster and wear your mask. It's not just to protect you, it's to protect other more vulnerable people in our populations. And I think especially in West Hollywood, we have reason to be especially vigilant about things like this. So that is my only comment, and just thank you for humoring me as your acting chair tonight. Do we have any other comments from commissioners? No. Jennifer, I'm sorry, and Robin, I'm sorry we didn't mention this. I believe, I know SASE is canceled in November and December. Do we have any design review meetings coming up?
We would like to reinstate the December 9th meeting that was typically would be a design review subcommittee date, but was taken for the SASE meeting. There's nothing on that meeting. And so we had talked about that a little bit at the last meeting to try to get a feel for if the subcommittee members were available.
The SASE subcommittee members or the design review?
The design review subcommittee.
I think we may need to ask that question at the next meeting, unless you think that's going to be too late, just because we don't have all of the members of that subcommittee present.
What we can do is we can reach out and get a good idea of whether people are available or not, and then we can then the commission can make that decision at the next meeting when everyone is here.
Sounds good. Thank you. Okay, unless anyone has anything else, I will adjourn this meeting to our next regularly scheduled meeting on Thursday, November 18th at 6:30 p.m. until completion via teleconference. Thank you everyone for joining, and enjoy the rest of your Thursday night.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.